Hey everybody. Well, we're getting down to the end here, and so I thought I'd have a little bit of fun. I don't know why I was thinking about noir films this week, so I thought I'd do the last video of the course noir themed. I'm basically just going to run through and show you some different techniques, and you can follow along. I will post all of the images here in this tutorial as supplemental files up on the learning management system, and you can give a go yourself at some of the techniques I demonstrate in this video. So without further ado, why don't we get started? So I have assembled some example images that we can use in this tutorial, and I want you to take a look at all of these images and think about what they have in common. Just take a look for a second. Did you notice it? Well, I'll tell you, all of these are images of different things. All of them have different figures, different backgrounds, but they're all rectangles. Every image that you get is going to be a rectangle. So when you are blocking for, say, a design like this, for instance, and you want to have circular or even just something with a curve in it, you need to make some affordances in terms of how you're framing it up in InDesign. And what we can do here is I'll show you how to make this design using these two images. I've got one of Jupiter and one of Neptune. So right now I've got blank circular frames in here. And all you really need to do to place an image is just drag it and drop it right into the frame. So there's Jupiter. Now you're going to notice you can't really make much out. That is because if we look at this object, it is huge, right? It's a really big image. So if we want it to look like the design I just showed you, what we can do is we can shrink this down, make it much smaller. Remember, hold down shift when you're resizing. You don't want to accidentally distort the image. And now I can get in closer and do a little more fine-grained detail. I'll resize the image. Now I'm not resizing the frame, I'm resizing the image. And then once I have it how I want it, then I can get in here and adjust the placement. And even now, if I want to move it with more precision, I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard, right? Same thing for Neptune here. You drop Neptune into this frame, and I'm just going to do the same exact thing here and click out of there. Now, when you drop these images into the frame, they're what we would call linked, right? Oh, I need to do this tool here. Oops, let me get off of that and zoom out. Oops. Let me try that again. I accidentally hit delete when I was going for the arrow key. There we go. I'll zoom out and make this a lot smaller. Now, you'll notice when I drop these images into InDesign, they look like they're about the same size, give or take. But the size of the image doesn't necessarily tell you much about what it's going to look like on the printed page here. I think this is pretty much how I had it in the example. Yeah, and pretty close. All right, if I wanted to, I could fiddle with it and make it look exactly the same, but I'm not going to do that. So these are linked in here, and you see I have my links tab open up here with both of the images that I have linked. And if you want to go to that object on the page, you can just click the hyperlink right here. Let's talk a little bit about appropriateness of image choice for a frame. So what I did here, I'll just zoom out so you can see the whole layout. I knocked this together in about 2 minutes, but what I did here is I just put in, it's a rectilinear frame that I drew with the pen tool, and then I threw a few Bezier curves in here and made the text wrap around the object so you get this curved effect. I don't know if that's the best design principle, but I just wanted something to show you this next point that I'm about to make. When I click on this image here and I go to the links tab, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see more. You can see I've got all kinds of information on when I place this, what the size of the file is, and then here's something to pay attention to. So the actual PPI on this is 72. If I go back to and PPI stands for pixels per inch, right? If I go back to my Jupiter photo here, you can see this is also 72, but when you compare the two, this one looks a lot more crisp than this one, and that's because they were taken at different dates. The Jupiter photo has more pixels in it. This one right now has an effective PPI of 126. What does that mean? Well, when we are going to print this document, we want to make sure that the resolution is going to be high enough so that the document doesn't look, or so that the image on the document doesn't look pixelated. For jobs that we're going to print, we really want to focus in on this number right here, effective PPI. So right now this is at 126, and what I'll do here is I will resize this so that I can click off of that, so that I can show you how this changes. So keep your eye on this number right here. Right now it's at 126. If I make this image bigger, it's going to go down. Now it's down to 92. If I make this image smaller, it's going to increase. Now I'm back up to 149. I'm at 196, and if I come down even more, now I'm at 272. So what does this mean in terms of what values you're shooting for in your projects? Well, 120 I think is where we started. That's borderline too low. It's going to look grainy and pixelated when you print it. 272 is a lot closer to where we'd like to be. Ideally, you'd shoot for around 300 PPI. It's not always possible. It really depends on the application, how much scrutiny people are going to be putting into the image. But if you make something that's like 72 or lower, what you're going to end up with is an image that's very grainy. So because I set this frame as a pretty big area on this page, I think this is 16 inch by 9 inch page, if I want to use this at a high resolution, say like closer to 300 for PPI when I'm printing, then this frame is going to be too big. So I need to either adjust the layout or find a higher quality image. And in the case of Neptune, I really don't think that there is a higher quality image. I think there's only really been one satellite that took this photo. So maybe I'd get an artist rendering or a photo illustration or something like that. And if I needed to occupy this much space with the image because of my layout, then I can use that as a solution. The other alternative is to just change the layout entirely. Here's a nice photo that I pulled off of the Library of Congress website. This one is called September Sun. It is by Dwight Davis, taken circa 1910. Really a great photograph. Got a couple problems with it. Not necessarily with the photo, although the photo is a little bit fuzzy, but we've got a problem here with the angle at which it was scanned. And if you look at Library of Congress scans like this print that I retrieved, you're going to often notice that when someone put them in the scanner, or maybe they were scanned by a machine, but it's not straight. And sometimes they're a little degraded anyway, and you're going to get, this is a paper mat that's been, the paper's been slowly disintegrating and it's been chipped away at, and you want to maybe get rid of that. But if you have a photograph and it's off center, it's not a big deal to fix. What you want to do first here is I'm going to go ahead and go to this tool right here, and then I am going to start dropping in some guides, and I want my guides to more or less conform to where the edges are. And what you do is you lower the guide enough so that it's going to give you a reference point when you're rotating this image, like this, and then I'm going to drop the last one in here. Now you can see this is not off by that much, so when we are going to transform this image, it's not going to be too difficult to make this look correctly. So I'm going to select rotate canvas and then arbitrary, and why don't we start with 0.5 degrees counterclockwise. Okay, we'll go ahead and increase that. Oh, does this not give me a preview? Aha, that's why nothing was rotating. All right, so I overdid it on that one. I think 0.5 was a little bit closer to where I wanted to be. So let's go ahead and transform it again here, and we'll go to arbitrary image rotation, and let's try 0.5 degrees and see what that does. And that was pretty good, actually. Let's go ahead and move our... Oops, I didn't actually want to do that. What I want to do is move the guides. And yeah, we're almost there. If I wanted to, I could go back and fiddle with it and get it exactly how I want it. But probably that would be good enough. It's not so off-center like when I started, and realistically, this might be an instance where I'm not too concerned about it being that off-center anyway, because it's going to be very difficult for the eye to detect that. So let's go ahead and crop that out, and I'm going to go ahead and make a color adjustment here. This is probably one where I would want to go ahead and change the contrast on it and make it just a little bit sharper. Like, that's probably enough. Now, be careful with these. You don't want to go crazy. Like, you don't want to max it out at 100 or go in the other direction. What you're doing there is making being a little too heavy-handed. So I want it to be just have a little more contrast, and that's going to be good for me. I'm happy with that. Now, some images like this, you're going to want to probably preserve the circular shape so that you can get the most of this possible. If you try to get it with the elliptical tool, it's going to be a little bit tricky. But this is where guides, again, are pretty handy. If you drop in your guides right at the edge of the image, not going to be very precise here because I'm trying to move faster, but I'll put these in. Now I'm going to lose the stuff that's on the mat, but that's okay if I'm just trying to get the image, the focal points right in the center. You've got a nice maypole here in the background. If I want to select this, I can start up here at the top left. I hold down Shift, and then with my selection tool, if I go down to the bottom right, I'm going to get a perfect circle there. Now you see the circle is different than, or the mat is not a perfect circle itself. So it's not going to be a big deal, but you're going to lose just a little bit of the image. But then I can crop this out, and I've got the image as I like it. Although I crop to the guides, which is not something that I want to do, I would have to go back and crop it to the selection. Or what I could do is just go to the select filter here, or the select menu here, and I can invert the selection and then just delete the background out of there. Oops, I did generative fill by accident. It actually did not a terrible job, although that doesn't really look like a normal tree to me. But you're familiar at this point with how to delete the background of an image. So that is it for this section. Have a look at this one here. This is an excellent photograph, really good. You might remember it from the color exercise. Very visually striking. Little damage. We're going to talk about that in a minute here. But before we get to fixing the damage, I'll just say something here that maybe I'll try and blow your mind a little bit. This is not a photograph, right? Well, what do I mean when I say this isn't a photograph? Some of you may be ahead of me here, but bear with me. Ever seen this painting before, right? This is by René Magritte. In the bottom it says in French, this is not a pipe. It's a painting of a pipe, right? It's called, the title of this one, fittingly, The Treachery of Images. So this is not a photograph. What is it? It's a scanned version of a photograph, and maybe it's even scanned from a negative. But when we think about this photograph, what we really first need to think about is how is it stored. So if you're thinking about effective PPI, that's one thing, but also you want to think about image size as well. Now this one happens to be, I changed this to details view in Windows. This one happens to be a TIFF file. TIFF file is really high quality. It is lossless, meaning it's not super compressed. And you can see it's the biggest photograph I have. It's way bigger than all of these other ones combined. It's at 15 megabytes. Now, if you're working with one of these in InDesign or a couple of them, not going to slow you down very much. If you are trying to do a multi-page spread and you've got 150 TIFF files and you're trying to navigate between the pages, that's going to crash InDesign unless you set it to the lowest possible display settings where it doesn't even render images. So you have to think about file type. So when we're thinking about file type, TIFF is the best to work with, but you can only use so many of them. We may have to take this really super high quality image and reduce it, but not reduce it so much that you lose a ton of the quality. Just reduce it to a file type that's going to make us be able to work with it in InDesign, especially if we have a huge file with tons of pages, hundreds of pages. So when we're thinking about the types of images, the three that we think about typically are PNG, JPEG, and TIFF. PNG supports transparency, JPEG does not. That's the difference between those two. There are other types of file formats, like I have one here. I'll change this back to large icons. I have one here that's called WebP. This is a file format that Google developed. I think it's like a JPEG, but it has less compression or something like that. I don't work with those. But these are all, I don't know about WebP, but the rest of them are all raster images. And a raster image is an image where you're storing the information as pixels as opposed to a vector graphic or SVG file. A vector graphic is storing the information in the photo as some sort of mathematical equations. I don't understand the technical element of it. I only know that that's how it's stored. The nice thing about vector graphics is they are infinitely resizable. The bad thing about vector graphics is they can't be used really to print from. You have to convert them eventually to a size that you want. And it's not difficult to do. You just drag it into Photoshop, set the resolution you want. Again, we're usually aiming for 300 ppi. That will adjust the target size, and then you'll get the image in the correct aspect ratio, and you can drop it into your project. All right, let's talk a little bit about this image right here. This image is the one that I used in the color tutorial. I told you it was damaged, right? And we've also got some artifacts up here, like this is writing probably from the person who originally took the photograph, putting in some metadata for future use. You've got options when it comes to repairing. Now, the first thing you can probably really do just to save yourself some time is to go ahead in Photoshop and just crop out the parts that are going to be so badly damaged that they're not really worth your time to salvage. So in this case, what I'm going to do is select the layer that I want, or select the part of the image that I want to keep. And then what I can do, once I have that part of the image selected that I want to keep, I can go to image and then crop it out. Now I've gotten rid of all of the damaged parts that are not worth the time to save. You can see there's still some damage up here, and then the worst probably issue with this photo are the two giant scratches here that we have to try to fix. So why don't we make that a little bit bigger? And you've got options here. I like to use the clone tool. What you do with I'll show you on another image what the clone tool is useful for. Basically what you do is you select a reference point and it'll paint over the part that you have selected with a duplicate of the reference point. It's good for things like grass. However, you can also use this tool right here. This is the spot healing brush, and what you can do is, if you get in real close here, you can adjust the size a little bit. I might come up a little bit with this, maybe 22, and then you can just go right through here, highlight the damaged part, and you can see it samples the pixels around the spot that you're highlighting. and it will do a pretty decent job. I mean, if you are looking at this from any kind of distance, you're not going to see that repair at all. So we would call that good enough. Now, some of you may be in this class, but I know for sure there's people out there who are pixel pushing perfectionists, to use a little bit of alliteration. They will tell you probably that yes, you definitely can see that quick repair I just did, and you got to go in there and really change 500 settings. That's cool, and those people are wizards with Photoshop. Most of the time, I don't have time to do that. That's not my primary profession, so I'm gonna go with the the healing brush. But if it's your thing and you really love editing images and you like fixing the imperfections, by all means go through and work your ways fixing this. And this is really great too for these things right here. The one thing I'll say about fixing this stuff, just take them right out. It's almost like playing a really boring video game, but you can take these out. Here's a little bit bigger one. Try to repair that. This is kind of a rabbit hole you can fall down. If you look close enough at any image, you're going to start to see that there are hundreds of imperfections, especially in old images like that. The closer you get, the more you can see. I mean, it's almost like one of those fractal images where you keep going and it just keeps going and going. The more you look at it, the closer you get to it, the more you're going to notice those imperfections. So be wary of kind of saying, I'm going to fix everything with this photo and take out all of these spots. What you're doing is, this is an old photo anyway. You expect there to be some damage or some artifacts in it that distract a little bit. But if you really clean up, say, like 1/3 of this sky and get all of these out, and then come to realize that you need the image and you need to just have the project done and there's no more time, you're going to see that the part that you cleaned up using any sort of repair tools is going to look a lot different than the part that's unrepaired. So you have to kind of accept a certain level of imperfection if you're using old photos like this from the archives, or if you're using new photos and you just have a couple imperfections in there. You have to adjust your expectations and really think about the application. If this photo is going to be 3 inches by 2 inches on the page, and people are going to be looking at that page at a bulletin board, or it's going to be a poster up on the wall, they're not going to get in so close that they're going to be able to see a ton of imperfections. That scratch will be noticeable, but that's something you can fix in, what did I do it in 30 seconds? But all those little imperfections, they're not going to notice them. And after a certain point with the resolution of your printer, it may not even pick up the imperfections because they're so small that they're lower than the amount of pixels that it's actually printing at, the effective resolution that it's printing at. I know I got this photo off of the Library of Congress free to reuse website, but I cannot locate it again. I got it years and years and years ago, so I don't have the photographer's information on this one. I believe the title was something like County Fair, Broken Bow, Nebraska, but I was unable to search and locate this image. But anyway, that's the image I've got here. Sometimes you got an image that looks pretty good. I mean, this one has a really nice focal point. It's got some clutter here around the edges. Not too bad. I can probably live with this border background because I like how the contrast changes as you go towards the edge of the frame. But there are some things that maybe I don't want to be so prominent. This guy who's hanging out in the background, this resident who's either manning the fair or attending, I would like for that person to be a little less prominent, even though he's not in focus. It would be nice to blur that out. We've got some clothes and then a bunch of irregular jars over here. I would like, if I were going to use this, say, for a Halloween application, I would like the focus to be on the pumpkins and on the wildflower display and the produce. So what I'm going to show you here is me removing or blurring the background, and I'll speed up some parts of the video so that you don't have to watch the whole thing in real time. Okay, to select the part that I want for this photo, I'm going to use the lasso tool, and I'll use the polygonal lasso tool. Now that's going to be not going to be super precise because you are selecting things using straight lines, and obviously there's a lot of curves in this image. But this is also a very low resolution image, so when you actually get it onto the page, it's going to be quite small. You're probably not going to see. I sped this up, obviously. I'm not working this fast in real life, but just go through. The important thing to remember here is that you don't have to do all of it at once like I'm doing. I'm just doing this really quick for demonstration purposes. You can work on this in sections, and the advantage of working in sections is if you make a mistake when you're placing one of the guide points with this tool, then you don't have to start all over again from the beginning, which can be quite frustrating. And this is a photo that would lend itself particularly well to working in sections because it has natural dividers in it. So you're just going to go ahead and go all the way around the image, get the part that you want, and just get pretty close. Now, I'm going to go ahead here and select the blur tool, and when you turn this tool on, you want to check the strength first. You don't want to be blurring it too much. So I'm going to dial down the strength to like, 30% around there. And then you want to change your brush size as well. I'm going to use a really big brush on this, so I have to make fewer passes. But if it's a tight area, you can use a smaller brush. So you're going to see here that I'm blurring the wrong part. I'll realize it in just a second, and then I will undo all of that and go back and invert the selection because we want to be not blurring the figure, we want to be blurring the background in this image. And just make steady passes. There's no reason to go fast. Just like if you're using spray paint in real life, you want to make steady, even passes on the material. And if you don't like how the background looks, you want more blur, just make another pass. Or you can adjust the strength as well, and you can make the tool stronger so that it blurs a little bit faster. And I'm just sort of working my way down the right-hand side here. For those numbers, you want to make sure they're blurred sufficiently. You'll see I probably should have blurred them a little bit more, but it's all right. And that's pretty much it. You just want to deselect. Now make sure you're satisfied before you deselect. You don't want to have to reselect everything again, especially if you did the whole thing at once like I just did there. Alright, well here's the results. You can see the image on the right-hand side has more of a focal point on that front table and the wares and different vegetation and stuff for sale on the table. I have the numbers blurred out down here a little bit. If I wanted to, I could go ahead and either remove those or blur them out a little bit more. And if you look really closely, you'll see like around this pumpkin, there's a little bit of a gap between the blurred area, but you can see from the brush that I was using, that's meant to paint in wide strokes, and if you want to get finer grain detail, you can of course get in closer and feather that out and make it look much better than the quick job that I did in just 6 or 7 minutes. Well, for this image, I told my AI chatbot I want a long table with a white linen tablecloth. I want it to be filled with fancy desserts, macarons, petit four, etc. And I want it to be well lit. And for the most part, I think that the AI did an okay job. But of course, with any AI generated image, you have to scrutinize. You have to look very closely. And if you look close here at this image and you zoom in, you've got this irregularity. First of all, just on the macro level, this is too well defined. You can see that in the image already here where this stand should be, the desserts are getting blurry, and blur shows distance in a photograph. The focal point is in focus. Everything behind it is going to show difference. So the figure here in this image are these desserts up front. This should already be blurring at the same consistent rate as the other objects in the background image, or in the background of the image. So as you get further and further away from the camera here, or farther and farther away from the camera, you start to see the image become more blurry. And this blurring is not consistent to in focus. And if you look at the base of this pedestal or cake stand, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of intersecting with other elements on the page in a way that doesn't look natural. So what we want to do here, or what I'm going to try to do, is to get rid of this cake stand. And I have a short video. I'm going to accelerate parts of it so that you don't have to watch the whole thing at normal speed. But I have a short video that you can watch, and I'll sort of narrate over the top, and I'll put it in here. All right, so I've got my document open in InDesign, or Photoshop here, and that's the object I want to take out. So I'm going to go to the Remove tool. Now, I'm going to show you this first attempt that I made because I made kind of a classic mistake here. It's not really a big deal, but when you are highlighting, you got to make sure you leave enough room. And I was using my stylus here, and I got to a little past this point and realized that I ran out of room on the stylus pad. So it's no big deal. I just canceled it, go back, resize the image, and here I'm going to be a little less careful in this next attempt. You don't have to be laser accurate with this tool for it to work. You'll see that even though I have a couple wild turns there, I get pretty good results if you just make sure that the whole object is in the frame. And you'll see here in a minute that I didn't maybe get it 100%, but it's going to be pretty good. Now, if you look closely here, you'll see there's a little artifact. There's something left from the tray. So I'm carefully scrutinizing here to make sure that that's the only issue. There is another small issue that I'll point out later, but it's not going to be a big problem. But this one might be visible. So just in case, I'm going to use the clone tool here, and you can see you have to adjust the size of the brush to make sure it's going to work. It's kind of like a Goldilocks effect. Don't want it to be too small because then you won't get everything in one pass, and you don't want it to be too big because then you might hit something inadvertently. So with this clone tool, you hold down Alt and then click to set up the reference point, and you'll see the reference point dragging along as you move the clone tool brush. So there's my reference point, and I'm just going to make one clean pass right here. And then you just want to make sure that you go through and take a close look at that so that anything that's left over or any irregularities can be corrected, but that's definitely good enough. So here are the results of my efforts. On the left, you can see I've got the tray here, and on the right, I've got the tray removed now. There's a little blank spot left in the table, but that's something that I can live with. There is one issue, though, that if you look really closely, you can see, I don't know what this is, some kind of something made with like a pavlova or something. It's got duplicated somehow into this part of the image, but it's white on white, so it's going to be pretty tough to detect. And if you find yourself in a situation like this, I mean, you could go through and really spend more time cleaning this out. You could even try running remove object again to get rid of that irregularity. However, it's a rabbit hole. You can spend hours and hours of your life and really only get marginally better results. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you need to make it any better than this? And it's not like you're settling like good enough, but if it's truly not going to be an issue, why spend more time on it? So I have a finished design here, and you can see that I ran a background box over this with some transparency, and then the lettering runs right over this. Now, you can barely detect it if you look closely, but let me tell you something. Nobody's going to look that close probably in real life. Much more commanding of your attention is this interesting font. It's called Waverly. It's like a Art Nouveau font, and this is going to catch people's eye a lot more. These interesting letter forms, they're not going to scrutinize or look very closely at what's behind the curtain here, so there's really no point in spending additional time taking that out.